it's Connie again. And I was just thinking, I have so many topics in the hopper that I want to get to eventually, but I guess that's a good problem to have. I just want to get to all of them now, but patience is a virtue, I guess. But I was thinking, since Father's Day is right around the corner and Mother's Day just recently passed, that it would be a good time for me to do a video about my own parents. And this story might take several parts. Um, so we will just see how far we get today. But basically, I had very good parents, my siblings and I, growing up. They had no experience with blindness because no one in our family previously had any eye problems, and all four of us siblings were completely blind. And they just kind of, I mean, of course, it was hard and adjustment and all that, but they just learned to adapt and just treated us normally. And like whenever people would ask them, what is it like having four blind children? They just would say, well, I don't know, because for them it was just pretty much normal. And they never had sighted kids, so they didn't really know how to answer that. They just went day by day and figured things out as they went along. And um, so yeah, my they when my sister and I went to school 200 miles away from home, they came and got us pretty much every weekend in the 9 years that we attended that school. So altogether, that was like 270,000 miles that they drove just to do that. And so they were really committed to the family unit and keeping us as unified as possible and whatnot. And I'm sure I'll do more videos telling bits of my life story as we go along and everything. Um, but in this particular video, I want to focus on what it was like to care for them as they, in their last days, basically. Um, so we had a family band, and we were all just very close as a family. There were some tensions that started to develop between us. Which is another whole long story in and of itself. But just suffice it to say, about 20 years ago, maybe not quite, is when things started to, um, just as we grew up, it was, I think, just really hard for them to accept that we were growing up and becoming more independent, and just weren't carbon copies of them. And I think that's just, I mean, all parents, I'm sure, even though they may try to not let this influence them, but they all hope that their kids, will be have similar, grow up to have similar values as them, and uh, things like that. But that isn't always the case. I mean, it might be the case for a long time, but you just never know. This is a lesson I have really learned. You don't know what the future holds, and there can just be some surprises in store that you never, ever, ever. You would have bet your life that such and such would not happen. So there are just no guarantees in life as to how you might change or your kids might change, and things like that. So, but anyway, so yeah, things were had been kind of just growing, but we still managed to keep in very close. Like, we would do conference calls, my siblings and I, with my parents every couple weeks or 3 weeks at most, where we would all get together on the phone and talk to each other, but we hadn't really seen each other in person for a while. Um, but on my dad's 80th birthday, which was in mid June of 2021, he turned 80. So I was just thinking that would be a great time to go and see him out there on the ranch and everything. A good excuse, basically. Um, so I went out there, and things were a little awkward at first, but we had a good time, and I'm so glad I did that because we have been, my siblings and I had all noticed that, like, my parents their health was declining, and um, I had even questioned several times because I live way closer to them than my siblings did. So I said, you guys should just move down here or come down here for an extended stay or whatever. But they were just very stubborn and independent, kind of old school type philosophy, and just didn't want to let us know how bad their health was, and didn't want to accept help from us because always before they had always been the ones that had helped us kids, and that role reversal was just really hard for them to adjust to. Um, and so after I saw him, though, I just realized how much weaker he was and everything. And it just really became a more important priority. And then after he saw me, he just realized, like, maybe I can come and live with them for a while or whatever. So he talked to mom about it, and they finally agreed to come. And they really had no choice at that point. So I just don't know what they would have done had they not taken me up on that. And I'm just so glad I offered that, because otherwise I just hate to even think about what might have happened, because they were just very isolated at that point in their lives. And So yeah, because like I said, dad just hated to accept help from people and stuff like that. So um, in October, though, like October 10th or somewhere around there, they were in another town about 100 miles away, because the small town where I grew up, there weren't any specialists or anything like that, and both my parents' health was deteriorating, so they both had to see doctors frequently, which in a way was like a good outing for them. That was about the only time they went out, and like would eat supper at a restaurant and probably sleep overnight at a hotel and stuff like that. So that was a good part of that whole thing, of all the trips to the doctor and stuff. But um, they were actually there for my mom, an appointment for her, but my dad was just getting worse and worse. And finally, long story short, ended up going to the emergency room. Um, and it was just the two of them. And like my mom wasn't well enough to take care of him properly or herself. And it was just a very sad situation. So at that point, they decided, yeah, we better move in with Connie or whatever. So that's what they did then. And I remember it was the 24th, around there, that we moved them to Rapid City here. And um, so, I mean, I figured he would be with me for several months. But as it turned out, it was only a week that they lived here in this house with me, or that dad did, I should say. I mean, mom was there too, but um, it was just, I'm just so glad we had that week, that last week together. There's just a lot of hard memories, but a lot of good memories too, in that time that we spent just watching shows together, some of dad's old westerns. And he really liked that show called The Mountain Men. Um, so he would be there in his wheelchair, and we would just be, I don't want to get emotional now because I have a lot more of this story to tell. But yeah, those were just really good times, and I don't know how to pause this video, so you'll have to forgive me for that. But anyway, so um, those were just really special times. One day we brought him outside when he was feeling up to it, and I kept track of all his various medications that he had to take. The bottles were different size or different shape, or I kept them in various different locations to keep track of what was what, and wrote copious notes, of course, as to when he had taken his last dosage, and when he should get what kind and how much he should get of everything. And then I would write down all the details. So I'm glad I've always been organized in that way. My siblings would always make fun of me for basically writing down everything. in my life. Like my brother Rory would always make the comment, "You know what you're gonna have for dinner like 2 years from now," because I just had it all planned out. Of course, I was like flexible when different things would come up, but I basically did have a rough outline of things. I guess I got that way partially when I was homeschooling all those kids and had to keep track of all their different curriculums and kind of got lazy as a cook. So I just kind of wrote out my little schedule of what we were having what day, and that just really helped. But I'm just really glad for that trait in this time when I was caring for dad and everything. And just since June, his birthday, to October, he just had gone from being able to walk himself, but now he was using a walker. And I had to like help him to the bathroom. And once we were in there, just help him to like prepare for sitting on the toilet and then sitting there, and I just hold him up. And well, at first I didn't have to do that, so I was able to leave him there for sometimes 10 minutes he would need in there and everything. And um I would be out in the other room, like listening for him in case he needed me. So I'd be playing some of his themes, Western theme songs, and he would be yelling at me what show that came from and what the show was about, and that I should look it up on, see if it was available on Netflix or whatever. um, but yeah, so then it was just such a change though that just, I mean, in a way, it was just like a whole different person because he never just would have allowed that kind of intimate help back in the day. But as I say, you may not have a choice at some point in your life and may need to learn to accept help from other people more. And so it just really taught us all humility and taught him patience and all of us patience. And yeah, it's just all around, I would say there were a lot more positives than hard times, but just within a couple of days of him being there, we knew that it was only a matter of time. And fortunately, he agreed to being enrolled in hospice. So then we learned about that whole thing. And in the future, if I was faced with that situation, I don't think I would personally recommend them just because my particular lifestyle or um, way of doing things, and dad too, and mom for that matter, we all like to be like more independent and do what feels the most right at the time and not be like so what's the word, rigid in what we can and can't do, which hospice is, because they just have a certain philosophy now that you're end of life and this is what you do when you accept that, and you don't accept like medical help anymore. And so yeah, that was just all a bit, I just kind of wanted to take things more as it happened instead of like making all these decisions about the future before we even knew what the future is going to hold basically. But there were some very good things about it too, like they brought a bed to, like a hospital bed, to our house so that I could sleep right in the room with dad. He was on the bed when I had it all level the way he needed it to be. And would get up with him in the middle of the night to give him meds or whatever, bathroom or whatever he needed. Um, and there were finally then he was admitted to the hospital um, after just a couple days because I wasn't able to like take care of him anymore, and just because of like changing him because he wasn't able to like reliably get to a toilet and things like that. And it just, I mean, there for a while it was really touch and go. We just thought we were going to lose him any hour or any minute. And so yeah, that's why he needed to be in the hospital there at that point where there were more people that were qualified. But he lingered on for longer than we thought there at the last. He actually got to the point where he was to move into a nursing home. And since he was in hospice, we didn't have as stringent of rules as everyone else in that nursing home had, because um, everybody else was under really strict, because this was right during COVID and all that. But since dad was on hospice, they let people like come into his room and visit him. And we were in the COVID part of the hospital, but I basically got to stay with him um, day and night. I just lived with him. And as it turned out, that was only about 10 days um, that before he passed away. Um, but that was just another um, really special time that I just don't know what he would have done if I wasn't there. And it just really makes me realize how important it is for people to have somebody to advocate for them when they're in a situation like that. I just feel so sorry for people that don't have that and haven't prepared at all for um, like what their end of life, what they might need. And um, so basically, I did um, like the nurse would help with bathing and um, stuff like that. But I was able to like help him to the toilet um, and all that. And one night, though, it was so scary. He tried to do it himself because I guess he thought I was sleeping or whatever. And I'm just glad I heard him, because if he would have fallen, which he most certainly would have, he was just not in any shape to get out of that bed by himself and walk all the way over to there and everything. But he would have just shattered, broken into a million pieces, because he had lost so much weight by this point. He would have had many broken bones, and it would have just been a sad situation. But fortunately, I was there and heard him. So then I was so glad that I had decided to like stay with him all the time, and mom would come and visit him for a few hours during the day. But like I said, she wasn't in the greatest health herself. So um, yeah, because the nursing home was very understaffed, especially at that time because of all the COVID stuff. And I mean, just to keep him company too, just to have a companion there for him. And that's another thing I really feel for the people that had COVID and stuff, and they didn't allow anyone to come and visit them, how lonely that must have been for them. And I'm sure you all have some, or many of you have stories you could share, and I'd love to hear about them in the comments. um, but just little things and bigger things, like I was just there to give him water when he needed a drink, or like ice chips. um, and many times when we did need a nurse, we had to wait like up to a half hour um, for somebody to come. And so uh, um, yeah, sometimes I would just have to tell the nurse when I felt that he might need some medicine, but usually it was the opposite. They wanted to give him medicine that I didn't really think he needed, because they were just on a like strict regimen, and we wanted him to not be so drowsy. I mean, if he was feeling good and everything, he we didn't think, especially on hospice, that was one good thing about it. We could like kind of have more say about some of the like medicine he did or did not want at any given time. It was just basically up to him as far as that part. Um, and so, yeah, then I would like turn on the light off and on whenever he would want more light or want it darker when he was ready for sleep. And then I would help get him back in bed and tuck him in and all that. And um, I would help him call a nurse, like if his um, remote control was lost, or it had gotten tucked in underneath him on the bed or fallen on the floor and stuff like that. Um, and sometimes I would communicate to the nurses what he might need um, when he got too weak to speak very loudly or communicate very clearly. And so, anyway, then in mid November, he passed away peacefully in his sleep one night. And so, yeah, I will probably do another part to this next time. So, please like and subscribe and um, comment. I always love hearing comments from people. And I will see you next time. So, bye for now.